Good morning and welcome back to the Teacher's Wake Up Call. I need to get my coffee. Hold on. I keep forgetting that I have a long wire, but sometimes it gets like tangled up onto itself, like any proper wire. Should I be using a wireless mic? Absolutely, I should be using a wireless mic, but I find that when I'm filming this close proximity, the only wireless mic that I have creates some kind of like weird feedback noise. It's a like very high pitched little noise. Maybe it's just me, but I can hear it and it is so annoying. Okay, I'm here to talk about a very important question, and I don't know if I'm going to end up trending because of this. Maybe not, maybe I will. Am I an anime tourist? So I was watching a few videos on YouTube from some of the creators that I follow, and they were talking about this tier list, this anime tier list. Now you have to understand, okay, I plaster some of my walls with a whole bunch of anime posters, and I talk about anime and I give my anime reviews in a very simple form. And I felt very targeted, about how there are people who get into anime but are not really into anime. Okay, so I started asking myself this question because these guys who the anime men, and not the anime man who's a completely different person, the anime men put up this tier list of like ranking the most popular anime of the year, but going back all the way to like the 1960s. I don't think that's fair, first of all, okay? That's like saying the best movies of all time and then saying that Citizen Kane is a crappy movie. Okay? That's what I got from that was like, that's what I interpreted. It's basically comparing a whole bunch of movies, a whole bunch of series, anime series, but just doing it almost felt, from the way it was presented to me, it almost felt like it was on a whim, and just based on feelings and how they felt about it. And then ranking the best opening episode, and like basically what I saw was very much kind of like I'm ranking anime based on moods and feelings. All right, so I often talk about anime, but I'm very self-aware about how I haven't watched all anime. Okay, I don't make it a number one thing that I do because, what's the issue? I have no time. I teach. That's my job. I am a teacher. I have stuff that I need to do. And then when I get home and I'm exhausted, do I feel like watching anime? I'm asleep by the end of the first episode, right? If I'm starting a new anime. Have I watched some of the classics like Naruto? No, because it wasn't my time. It wasn't my era. It wasn't the anime that was meant for me. So, and if you want to think about the anime that I was watching when I was growing up, okay, Belle et Sébastien, Calimero, those were like a lot of like kid-oriented anime, and it probably wouldn't register on people's radars right now. There are a lot of series that I watched growing up that has influenced the way that I see anime that obviously people don't talk about today because they look at it, oh yeah, I keep forgetting Goldorak and Albator. Goldorak and Albator classics, all right? And I've watched them. Not religiously, but I've watched them, okay? So people will watch those old animes and say, well, of course they suck. The animation is horrible. The dialogue is substandard. These are things that have evolved and changed. But at the time, some of these old anime were peak, were amazing, were ahead of their time. I'll give another example. Ranma. Ranma, that, like, I remember watching it. I started watching it, like, I remember watching an episode in 1994. And I know it was already out. And then I watched all of it in the late 90s and early 2000s. We watched all. My husband and I even watched the OAVs. Okay, we watched the OAVs. But it was ahead of its time. When you were thinking about the content and the subject, it's like it was not your typical anime series. And they put, I think, like, their tier list was B. So, tout ça pour dire, all that to say, I sometimes feel like I'm an anime tourist because I haven't watched what other people have watched. However, I have watched my fair share of anime because I consciously chose to watch some of these series, some of these movies, based on what I liked and what I wanted. Nobody talks about Blue Seed. I watched Blue Seed. I watched the entirety of Blue Seed. And I watched the original Tenchi Mio. I watched it. Very few people talk about it. They talk about all of, like, the subsequent series and how they're mid, but that's another story. So I don't think, when I do my anime reviews and I talk about anime, I don't think I am an anime tourist. But I can see how some people might think I am because, oh, I watched all the popular series. I think you can be an anime, I don't want to say connoisseur. That's like, you know, you're drinking wine and you can, like, figure out, you know, oh, this is a vintage. But I think you can be appreciative of anime and not have to watch 25 series at the same time. I think you can be passionate about a topic without having watched, you know, certain series because everybody else watched it. To me, I don't think I will get into Naruto, I don't know, because it wasn't my thing, just like Pokemon. Pokemon was not my era, it was not my thing. It came out at a time where I was already grown up, I was an adult, and it wasn't my thing to watch. All right? But I've watched Full Metal Alchemist, and I've watched some of the original one, and I watched the most recent one. Okay? So, you know. And I watched the original Neon Genesis when it came out on VHS tape. And I remember how confused, distraught, angry, upset I was at the end of that series, that last episode. Like, could I have my hour back, please? And I know there were movies, but let's not get into that. I know it's not a very teacher wake-up call topic, all right? But it bugged me because the way that people were talking about how the tier list was created, it was very much, I felt like, oh my God, is that something that I do? But then I quickly realized I am not an anime tourist. I have seen my fair share of anime in order to not be superficial about how I view the medium. I've seen enough. I'm not an expert. I'm far from being an expert, but I've watched my fair share of content to not be a tourist. It's like, you know, somebody going to France and only visiting Paris and claiming that they're an expert about French culture. Just because you went to Paris does not mean you understand French culture. Okay? You can appreciate Paris, you can appreciate what Paris has to offer, but you're not an expert about France. Same thing with anime. So yeah, it is so interesting watching the discourse about what was said and how this tier list was done and made. Apparently they were watching some episodes in double speed or in 1.5 speed in order to watch as many anime. What? Look, I've known people who sped run novels, and you can do that. You can speed run a novel. There are ways, I'm not going to be the one to judge those people because I am very picky when it comes to reading novels. So who am I to judge? So yeah, so it's super interesting to hear and read about the discourse when I know that. Could I watch more anime? Yes. Do I have the time to watch more anime? No. Am I very picky and choosy about the anime that I watch these days? Yes. Yes. Like, somebody just arrived. I should be watching My Dress Up Darling. Is that My Dress Up Darling? I think so. The guy who makes the dolls and who paints the faces and who's really good at sewing, and that student who is great into cosplay but has zero sewing skills. I should. But there's something about some of the stuff, how it's presented, that wasn't resonating with me. I watched some episodes of the second season, and my husband kept on telling me, you would understand this better if you watched the previous episodes. Yeah, but I'm enjoying what I'm watching. I'll just leave it at that. But do I have the time to rewatch? I don't know. Right now I'm focusing on Kaiju number 8 and Dan Da Dan. That's what I'm focusing on. It is. So yeah. So it's not very teacher-esque content. Maybe I'll have some content tomorrow on Thursday. But right now, I wanted to talk about that because it was on my mind all weekend. Have yourselves an awesome day.